The galaxy had always known conquerors. For centuries, different empires had risen and fallen, their banners shining like fire across the night, only to be swallowed by time. But none were like this new power. They were not explorers, not settlers, not dreamers. They were destroyers. Wherever their fleets appeared, worlds trembled. Entire planets surrendered before the first shot was fired. Armadas burned cities to ash, and the survivors whispered in terror that there was no force strong enough to resist them. They came from the void, their ships black and sharp, like the knives of a predator. Each vessel carried enough firepower to erase a continent in a single strike. Their leaders were cruel and arrogant, speaking only of conquest and chains. They believed that all species were beneath them, and in the beginning it seemed true. Planet after planet fell. Kingdoms that had lasted thousands of years knelt in days. Great civilizations that had dreamed of eternal peace saw their skies darken as the invaders blotted out their suns. The galaxy soon learned to fear their name. Children were told not to speak it aloud. Even their enemies dared not insult them, for the fear of punishment stretched beyond the stars. They were the masters of terror, and every world they conquered became another reminder that resistance was hopeless. But then something strange began to spread across the conquered systems. It was not a weapon, not a rebellion, not even a fleet. It was a whisper. A simple story, a name that did not belong to them. That name was humanity. At first, the conquerors laughed at the rumor. A small species from a blue planet, living on the edge of the galaxy. A young race, untested, unworthy of attention. The invaders believed such a species could not even dream of standing against them. Yet the whisper did not fade. It grew louder. From prisoners of war, from smugglers, from broken fleets fleeing defeat. Everywhere, the story was the same. They say the humans are different. They say the humans do not surrender. They say the humans fight even when hope is gone. For a while, the invaders ignored it. Why should they care about one small race among millions? But the whispers turned into warnings. Soon entire garrisons refused to fight in human space. Soldiers muttered that death was certain if humanity's fleet was near. Commanders grew angry, punishing those who spoke the rumor, but fear is harder to kill than flesh. Fear spreads faster than fire. The first real sign came at the edge of a burning star. The conquerors had prepared another attack, ready to burn another system into dust. But as their fleet approached, their sensors began to fail. Strange signals echoed across the void, disrupting communications. The commanders laughed at first, thinking it was a trick of the star's radiation. But then they saw it. A shadow stretched across the light of the star. It was not a planet, not an asteroid, not a storm. It was a fleet. Dark, silent, massive. The ships had sharp lines and cold steel hulls. They floated in formation like predators circling prey. Their engines glowed faintly, but their weapons stayed quiet. They did not move forward. They did not announce themselves. They only blocked the starlight, waiting. The conquerors had never seen anything like it. Their enemies always begged for mercy, fired desperate volleys, or fled into the darkness. But these ships did nothing. Their silence was worse than any roar. Their stillness was heavier than any threat. One commander whispered words he thought he would never say. Humans. The crew froze. The name alone was enough to send shivers through even the bravest soldiers. They had conquered hundreds of worlds, but not once had they seen a fleet that dared to stand still before them. Unmoving, unafraid. For the first time in their long reign, the invaders hesitated. The flagship sensors tried to scan the human vessels, but the data came back broken, scrambled, useless. It was as if the ships themselves were wrapped in shadows hidden from sight. Still, the outlines were clear. Vast warships, some larger than the conqueror's greatest battleships. The commander asked his officers, "Why do they not fire?" No one had an answer. Why do they not speak? Silence filled the deck. In that silence, the conquerors realized something terrifying. These humans were not prey. They were not rebels. They were not victims. They were predators waiting in the dark, choosing the moment to strike. The commander ordered the fleet to hold position, but it was too late. Fear had already begun to spread among the crews. Soldiers remembered the whispers. They remembered the warnings. They remembered the words, "Humanity does not surrender." For the first time in years, the invaders felt doubt, the kind of doubt that eats at the mind and turns pride into fear. Across the burning star, the human fleet remained silent. their black hulls casting shadows that swallowed the light. They did not need to speak. Their presence alone was enough, and in that moment the conquerors understood something terrible. The age of their easy victories was ending. The galaxy had trembled before them. But now, for the first time, they trembled before someone else. The silence of the human fleet was more dangerous than any weapon. The conquerors, who had once laughed at the thought of resistance, now stared at the endless line of dark silhouettes against the burning star. Each ship seemed carved from shadow, its surface marked with hard steel and glowing lines of cold blue light. They did not rush forward. They did not fire. They simply existed there, filling the void, blocking out the stars themselves. For years, the invaders had seen fleets scatter at their approach. Enemy commanders would send desperate signals of surrender or fire weak, broken volleys before being wiped away. But this was different. These ships did not bow, did not scatter, did not even speak. The humans had arrived not to beg for mercy, but to deliver a message without words, without sound. The message was clear. This is our space. Enter at your peril. The lead alien commander forced himself to breathe, his throat dry as ash. He tried to count the ships, but the shadows stretched farther than his eyes could see. It was as if the darkness itself had risen to challenge him. Reports came through the comms, trembling voices from his sub-commanders. Hundreds, no thousands. More ships appearing from hyperspace. Their formation. It is perfect. They move as one. Our scanners cannot break through their defenses. The commander gritted his teeth. They are only human, he hissed, but his words did not carry the strength he wished. The crew heard the crack in his voice, and they too felt it, the creeping doubt. Then the human flagship moved. It was slow, deliberate, like a giant waking from slumber. A ship larger than anything the conquerors had ever built drifted forward, casting a shadow so wide it seemed to consume their own fleet. Its hull glowed faintly with lines of light, pulsing like veins carrying fire. Its engines burned silent blue, steady, unhurried, confident. One officer whispered in fear, "It blots out the star." The flagship's presence alone was a weapon. No shot had been fired, but the conquerors already felt crushed, as if gravity itself was pressing against them. They tried to scan it, to measure its weapons, its armor, its power. Every reading came back broken. The ship seemed to bend the very signals around it, as if reality itself bent to protect humanity. A sudden flash lit the void. Not from human weapons, but from their communication array. A single signal was sent, carrying across the battlefield. The invaders expected threats, declarations, demands. Instead, the message was only 2 words. Turn back, that was all. No roar of arrogance. No endless speech of superiority. Just 2 words delivered with the calm certainty of those who did not bluff. The conqueror commander felt his stomach twist. His kind had ruled with fire and chains, always announcing themselves with shouts of dominance. But these humans, these silent warriors, had no need for such things. Their strength spoke for them. Their presence alone was proof enough. He shouted to his fleet, desperate to regain control. "Do not fear them. Fire at once." But even as the order left his lips, his voice shook. Crews hesitated. Soldiers looked at their screens and saw the endless black Armada, waiting, silent, patient. Their hands trembled over their weapons. To fire at such ships felt like throwing stones into a storm. Still, a few obeyed. Bright streams of plasma fire cut across the void, blazing toward the nearest human vessels. The conquerors expected impact, explosions, victory. Instead, the shots dissolved. A shimmer of light rippled across the human hulls, a shield that seemed alive, bending energy away like water. Not a single scratch marked their steel. Then one human ship answered. Not with words, but with light. A single beam fired from its hull, silent and cold. It did not explode, did not flare. It simply cut. One alien cruiser was sliced in half, its core burning as the pieces drifted apart. There was no noise, only silence. No roar of destruction, only precision. The conquerors gasped in horror. One ship destroyed with a single stroke. The humans did not even waste energy. They fired once and then returned to their stillness. The commander of the invaders clenched his fists, but his hands shook. He could feel the fear spreading through his fleet. The whispers had been right. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not just another race to be crushed. They were predators, patient and merciless, waiting for their enemies to break themselves. And worse, the galaxy was watching. Reports had already spread beyond this battle. Smugglers, traders, and hidden observers would tell the story. Humanity's fleet had stood against the conquerors and did not move aside. Entire systems that once trembled at the invaders would hear of this stand, and hope would ignite. The commander knew it. He felt it deep in his bones. This was not just a battle. This was a warning to the galaxy. Humanity was sending a message not only to the invaders but to every world that listened. We are here. We will not move. We will not bow. The human armada shifted slightly, their black hulls gliding into a tighter wall. Engines glowed faintly as they prepared. The invaders, who had once thought themselves gods, suddenly felt small. And for the first time, the conquerors understood that their easy reign was over. They had conquered worlds without fear. But now they faced an enemy that did not flinch, did not beg, did not break. The humans had revealed themselves. The Armada had risen, and the stars no longer belonged to the conquerors. Conquerors had never known hesitation. Their fleets were used to moving fast, overwhelming enemies before they could think. Victory had always been swift and brutal, a storm of fire that left only silence behind. But now, staring at the human armada, they felt something unfamiliar. Doubt. The human ships waited like statues of steel. They did not rush. They did not scatter. They let the conquerors fire first, as if testing their courage. And when the first plasma bolts had dissolved against the shimmering shields, the invaders understood the truth. They had never faced power like this before. The alien commander roared, trying to drown his fear. All ships attack. Break their line. Overwhelm them. Engines flared as the invaders surged forward, thousands of warships burning bright across the void. Their weapons fired in blinding waves, missiles, plasma cannons, beams of raw energy, an ocean of destruction screaming toward the human fleet. The stars lit up as though the universe itself was breaking apart, but the human wall did not move. Their ships held formation, their shields glowing faintly as the storm struck. Explosions flared against their armor, but the line did not crack. The conquerors pressed harder, desperate, believing that sheer numbers would crush the humans. Then, with silent precision, the human fleet answered. The first volley came without warning. Dozens of beams fired at once, each one sharp and surgical. There was no wild chaos, no wasted shots. Every strike found its mark. Enemy cruisers split in half, their cores burning. Warships shattered into fragments before their crews even realized they were targeted. It was not a battle. It was an execution. The invaders screamed orders to scatter, to dodge, to regroup, but the humans were already there. Smaller human ships darted forward, weaving between giants, cutting through enemy formations with deadly accuracy. They struck like hunters, moving with a calm rhythm, while the conquerors flailed in panic. One alien frigate tried to retreat, engines burning at full speed. A human destroyer appeared beside it, silent and cold. With a single flash, the frigate was gone. On the flagship of the invaders, the commander's hands shook as he gripped the controls. Why are they so calm? He muttered. His crew did not answer. They watched in horror as ship after ship was torn apart, their fleet collapsing like sand beneath the tide. The difference was clear. The conquerors fought with rage, noise, and pride. The humans fought with silence, precision, and patience. Every movement of their fleet seemed rehearsed, every strike timed perfectly. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment, preparing for years in the dark, sharpening their weapons for the day they would face an empire. Within minutes, hundreds of alien ships had been destroyed. Thousands more were damaged, retreating in broken groups. Yet the humans had barely shifted their formation. Their armada still blocked the stars, unbroken, unshaken. The alien commander tried to rally his forces. Do not give in. We are stronger. We have more ships. Push forward. But even as he shouted, he saw the truth. Numbers meant nothing here. Every wave of attackers was cut down like grass before the scythe. Every desperate maneuver ended in silence. The humans fought not like prey, not even like equals. They fought like predators who had already chosen the outcome. Panic spread through the invader fleet. Crews abandoned positions. Officers shouted conflicting orders, entire squadrons broke formation. Fear consumed them faster than fire. The whispers of humanity's power were no longer whispers. They were reality. One soldier muttered what many already felt. They are not defending. They are teaching us fear. The commander froze at those words. He knew they were true. The humans could have destroyed his entire fleet in minutes. Instead, they were deliberate, careful, slow. Every strike was chosen to break morale, to make his soldiers see the truth with their own eyes. The humans were not just fighting a battle. They were making a statement, and the statement was simple. We will not be conquered. Another beam fired from the human flagship, slicing through 3 cruisers at once. The void was filled with burning wreckage, debris drifting like ash. Still, the humans did not move forward. They did not chase. They held their line, forcing the invaders to crash against it like waves against an unbroken cliff. Finally, in desperation, the alien commander gave the order he had never spoken before. Retreat. The word felt like poison on his tongue. His fleet, once proud and unstoppable, now scattered in chaos. Some ships tried to jump to hyperspace. Others fled in every direction, engines burning as fast as they could. The humans did not pursue. They simply watched, their armada still and silent, letting the survivors run with terror in their hearts. The commander stared at the human fleet as his flagship turned away. He would never forget the sight. Those ships, dark as night, standing against his armada as if the stars themselves had chosen new guardians. The galaxy would hear of this. Every conquered world would know. The unstoppable conquerors had been stopped. The predators had found stronger hunters. As the human fleet held its ground unmoving, a new truth spread like fire through the stars. Humanity was not prey. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was the wall that could not be broken. And the conquerors, once feared by all, now carried a fear of their own. The invaders had never imagined such defeat. For years they had spread across the stars like wildfire, consuming everything in their path. But now, their fleets limped away, shattered and broken, leaving behind the wreckage of ships that once carried fear into every corner of the galaxy. And still the human armada did not move. They stood silent in formation, black shadows against the burning star, letting the ruins of battle drift in the void. Whispers of this clash spread faster than any fleet could travel. Traitors carried the tale. Prisoners of war repeated it in hushed voices. Entire planets that had lived in terror for generations heard the words with disbelief. The humans stopped them. It sounded like a dream, like a story too good to be true. But proof came with every passing day. Scattered invader ships limping through systems, broken and frightened, telling the same story with their silence. And for the first time in years, hope began to return to the galaxy. But the conquerors would not accept defeat so easily. Their pride was wounded, their arrogance torn. They could not allow the legend of humanity to grow unchecked. So they gathered reinforcements, more fleets than ever before, battleships pulled from distant territories, carriers stripped from occupied worlds. They would throw everything into the war, crush the humans in one decisive strike, and erase the shame of their failure. The new invasion came swift and merciless. Dozens of fleets advanced together, thousands upon thousands of warships filling the dark. Entire star systems trembled as the conquerors marched forward, determined to drown humanity in numbers. But humanity was ready. They had learned patience. They had studied their enemy. While the conquerors relied on overwhelming force, humanity relied on something greater: strategy. Their fleets did not rush head-on into the storm. Instead, they chose where to fight. They set traps, ambushes, and diversions. Human warships slipped in and out of hidden jump points, striking from unexpected angles, disappearing before the enemy could respond. An alien fleet of hundreds entered an asteroid belt, believing it was empty. Moments later, the rocks themselves came alive with hidden cannons, human ships cloaked within the shadows. Beams of light tore through the enemy, their formations collapsing in confusion. By the time they escaped, half their ships were gone, and the rest carried terror in their cores. Another fleet pushed into what they thought was undefended human space. But as they advanced, their supply lines were cut. Transports vanished, fuel convoys destroyed. Days later, their ships floated powerless, engines dead, waiting for mercy that never came. The humans were no longer defending. They were hunting, and the galaxy was watching. Worlds that had once bowed to the conquerors began to send secret messages to humanity. Smugglers offered information. Colonies sent supplies. Even species that had been enslaved for decades found ways to sabotage their oppressors. inspired by the story of the human fleet that had stood against the impossible. For the first time, the conquerors felt their empire tremble from within. Fear no longer belonged to their enemies, it belonged to them. Every shadow in space seemed to hold a human ship. Every silence carried the memory of the Armada that had blotted out the stars. On one conquered world, children whispered to each other under the night sky, "The humans are coming." The words were not fear. They were hope. Still, the conquerors fought on. They hurled more fleets into the war, desperate to reclaim their dominance. Yet each battle only deepened their wounds. Humanity did not always win with raw strength. Sometimes they pulled back, drawing the enemy into traps. Other times, small squadrons would sacrifice themselves to buy time, ensuring the larger fleet struck with perfect precision, and with each clash, the legend grew. The galaxy began to believe that perhaps the conquerors were not gods after all. Perhaps they could be stopped. Perhaps they could even be defeated. On the bridge of a human flagship, commanders spoke little. Their faces were calm, their eyes sharp. They did not speak of glory or pride. They spoke of survival, of strategy, of the need to protect not only their own world but every world that lay under the shadow of tyranny. Humanity had become more than a race. They had become a symbol, and symbols are harder to kill than fleets. The alien High Council watched their maps with dread. Systems they had ruled for centuries were slipping away. Fleets were vanishing. Whispers of rebellion spread faster than they could silence. For the first time, their empire saw cracks in the foundation. The humans had not only stopped their advance, they had turned the tide. But deep in their halls, the conquerors made one final vow. If humanity would not bow, then humanity would burn. They would gather their greatest weapons, unleash their deadliest commanders, and strike with everything they had left. It would be the largest battle the galaxy had ever seen. Yet even as they prepared, one truth gnawed at them, a truth they could not escape. If humanity could block the stars once, they could do it again, and this time the galaxy would stand behind them. The conquerors had gathered everything they had left. Their pride demanded it, their survival required it. From every corner of their empire, ships were pulled, titans of war, dreadnoughts larger than cities. Fleets that had never before been unleashed together now formed one colossal armada. It was their last chance to reclaim fear, to crush the legend of humanity before it grew beyond their control. The galaxy watched in silence. Traitors, rebels, refugees, all eyes turned toward the final battle. Entire worlds held their breath, waiting to see if the humans could stand against the storm once more. Hope and terror balanced like a blade's edge. If humanity fell, the galaxy would fall back into chains. But if they endured, then everything would change forever. The invader Armada arrived in a system of twin suns burning bright across the void. Their fleet stretched so wide it seemed endless, a living wall of fire and steel. Their commanders believed that no force could stand against such power. The sight alone was enough to break weaker species, but the humans did not break. When the conquerors entered the system, they found the human fleet already waiting. Not scattered, not hidden, waiting. Black ships in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming faintly in the twin suns' light. They were fewer in number, outmatched in size, but their line did not waver. They did not move aside. Once again, the stars themselves seemed to vanish behind them. The alien High Commander snarled, ordering the attack. The void erupted as thousands of weapons fired, waves of destruction tearing forward. Twin suns burned brighter as explosions filled the skies. It was the largest storm the galaxy had ever seen. And through it all, the human fleet endured. Shields glowed, hulls trembled, but their formation held. For every human ship that fell, 2 alien warships were cut apart in answer. Human beams fired in cold, merciless rhythm, slicing dreadnoughts open like glass. Smaller human squadrons darted between giants, striking at weak points, guiding their enemy into ambush after ambush. The conquerors fought with rage. The humans fought with resolve. Hours stretched into days. The system burned with wreckage. Planets shook as gravity bent beneath the fury of weapons. But the humans did not falter. Their voices over comms were calm, steady, precise. Hold the line. Cut their flank. Protect the flagship. No cries of fear, no pleas for mercy. Only duty, and slowly, impossibly, the tide turned. Alien formations broke apart. Commanders fell silent as their ships vanished in flashes of fire. Crews abandoned posts, desperate to flee, but there was nowhere to run. Every escape path was blocked by humanity's traps. The mighty Armada that was meant to restore fear instead became a graveyard of steel. The High Commander's ship trembled as systems failed, flames tearing across its decks. He stared at the human flagship through the smoke and whispered the words he had once laughed at. They do not surrender. With a final volley, the human fleet shattered the core of the enemy Armada. Explosions rippled outward, fire consuming ship after ship until the void itself glowed with the ruins of a fallen empire. And then, silence. The battle was over. The conquerors were no more. Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Worlds that had once lived in chains erupted with cries of freedom. Colonies that had hidden in fear sent out their banners once again. Children looked up at the night sky with new hope. The name of humanity was no longer a whisper. It was a roar. On conquered planets, slaves whispered to each other. The humans stood. The humans fought. The humans won. Humanity did not claim an empire. They did not raise themselves as rulers. They had no need. Their victory was not about dominance. It was about defiance. They had shown the galaxy that no power, no matter how vast, could hold the stars forever. In the halls of human command, there was no celebration, no boasting. The commander stood in silence, remembering the cost. Ships lost, lives given, families broken. Victory had come with sacrifice, and they carried that weight with them. But they also carried something greater, the knowledge that humanity had changed the course of history. From that day forward, the galaxy would never be the same. The conquerors had believed themselves eternal, untouchable, but they were gone, replaced by a new truth. Humanity was the wall that no one could break, and as the stars settled once more, the galaxy whispered a new legend. Worlds trembled before the conquerors. But in the end, it was they who trembled before humanity's Armada.